Okay, we're going to paint I'm going to paint a fire warrior. This is one I've painted already, so this one's finished. Apart from the base needs to be topped up a wee bit, but it's almost finished, it's just not quite. It's a kind of sandy colour scheme, and the whole army's like this. This pipe thing here is green stuff, and this on top of is a bit of the pulse carbine. So first you start by painting the whole model in this colour, and then wash it with Badab black, and then paint the armour, avoiding the creases, again with Commando Khaki, and what you end up with is a different coloured cloth and a lighter colour armour, but still with the creases, and then paint whatever side you want obviously, but this side I chose to paint skull white. That won't be pure white when it's finished, but if you start off with skull white, it's good. So next step, what we're going to do is we're going to take a mediumish to large brush. So there's it in comparison to the model, so it's quite big. Probably a small dry brush or a larger dry brushing brush if you're getting your brushes from Games Workshop. Then we take Vomit Brown, and it's just a really light dry brush onto the existing armour. Really light, so you'll barely see it at all, and a bit onto the skull white. Now I just chose to do this just because I think it gives it a variety in colour, and it just looks a wee bit more worn, and it looks like the dust of the sand possibly. So you can see there, it's slightly more orangey than before. The next phase now is to highlight all the edges of the model with a fine detail brush with Bleach Bone. Now these don't need to be too thin, leave them not wide, but as thin as you can get them, but not the thinnest you can get them, because you're going to put a white highlight right on the very end on top of this one. Right, so that's the whole model highlighted. See, it's not too accurate, it's quite rough, but that'll be hidden how messy it is later. Just seeing the white, just with your Bleach Bone covered brush, just rub it off on something and then just give it a dry brush, just to make it an off colour, so it's not as pure. Okay, the next phase is to, just on the tips of these highlights, to highlight them with skull white. Normally you wouldn't use skull white a lot because people say it's too bright or whatever, but it makes it look good. So you saw the result on this one, it looks fine. And it just defines the edges a wee bit better. Just on the very tip. And if you just do that all over on all the highlights. So here's the model. It's been completely highlighted now with all the white. You'll see it's much more defined. It's still not the same as this yet, but it's getting there. You can see a more gradual likeness. So now what we're going to do is we're going to paint, see the tips of the gun here, the bits here that aren't Commando Khaki, we'll paint them black, and this here, this emblem here, will be also black. Just do that all over the gun. Right, that's the black all being painted now. Now while you're at it with the black, you can put on scratches and little weathering, especially on the white, because it's going to weather more than it would than on the rest of it. There you go, there it is with scratches on it. It's starting to look more detailed now. Now the next phase is putting dark areas in with a Ogre and Flesh, and all you do is just take a wee bit of the wash and put it into the areas where it'll be getting less light and blend them into the rest of it, instead of blending the highlights into the rest of the colour. Blend the low light into the, instead. Now you can see that's already starting to make a difference. Now that all the lowlights have been washed onto the armour, what you can do is now wash all the cloth with the Ogre and Flesh to give it a more browny. That is all the wash has been applied. You'll see it's starting to take effect. It's looking darker in the areas where it should be dark and light in the areas. Okay, so the next phase is to fill these creases in here on the gun with a white wash. So we'll just take the skull white and mix it with some water and put it into the creases. So that's the washing. You can see it's now got the little rim of white on the gun, in all the creases, and in the emblem. The next phase will be to put the red set marking. Right, so there is the red markings on it, and I done the eye, the bottom eye red, and the top eye ultramarine blue. And now we're just going the cloth, on the ridges on the cloth, paint them bleach bone. Okay, so that's the bleach bone highlight on the cloth. See, that's quite distinctive, but at the moment it's a highlight that looks really out of place and a bit too bright. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our Ogre and Flesh again and wash that. Okay, so I've just washed it with the Ogre and Flesh. You can see it's still wet, but you can get the idea just from looking at it that it's muted colours and they're now much more subtle, blending it into the model better, making the armour the focus and not the trousers. So there you go, you can see that's almost it. Completely the same as this one. All that needs to be done is on the blue eyepiece here, is there needs to be a highlight of white on the bottom corner, and that'll bring that out. So there's the highlight on the lens. It's just skull white and a little small line around the bottom rim of the lens, and that's enough to highlight it. So there's the finished model, and here's what it looks like with the rest of the army.